Today I'm going to talk about why some newer players will pop this ball up and give their opponents a chance to hit an overhead. There are a number of ways that cause people to pop these balls up. I cannot cover them all in one video. Today I want to focus on this one shot, and that is a volley. Ball comes to me in the air and it comes on my center line, right where my spine is. I'll talk about why some people will take this ball and pop it up and how to fix that and get rid of those pop-ups. The big reason I see people popping this ball up, the one that's coming in their center line, that's about waist high or so, is they try and hit this with a forehand, meaning that as this ball comes in, they'll try and rotate this paddle around and hit this with a forehand. Now my elbow and my body are colliding with each other. I can't get this paddle further back here really to keep this ball low. If I turn sideways, this ball comes into my center line here. If I try and hit this with a forehand, I cannot get my elbow and my body out of the way of each other. The tip of my paddle is up. And then if I swing, my swing has to be up a little bit. It's very difficult to take this position and push it straight forward and get any power on that ball at all. So the swing doesn't help. It just lifts up the ball, gives my opponent an overhead. How do I keep from doing that? The best way is just to get lower in my position. So if I'm down here, I can keep my paddle out in front, and this ball that would normally come at my waist, I'm down here now and my paddle's out in front, and I can handle that ball better without doing this. And then I get rid of some of those pop-ups. Way to fix this, number two. Let's say I wasn't down as low as I should have been, and I'm a little bit more vertical. This ball's coming in the air, waist high. What do? If you've ever watched the movie The Matrix and how Neo dodges some of those bullets, kind of the same thing. We matrix out of the way so I lean away and give my paddle room to work and my body's not in the way anymore. Or the other way, I lean this way, get my body out of the way and give my paddle some room to work. And now I'm not required to, or I don't default to doing this forehand out in front, which is going to give them a pop-up. Now we don't always have time to lean out of the way. If that ball is coming really fast, I may not have time to do this, so that doesn't always work. Third way is, and this is the way I'm going to recommend, is we don't hit this with a forehand, we always hit this with a backhand. So this is what that looks like if I'm down in my ready position, or maybe I'm not so low down in my ready position. This ball comes into my center line, I focus on this elbow on the paddle side, and I pull it up and back, and I end up here. So it's a really quick way, so time's not as much of a factor as me trying to slide out of the way. This ball comes in quick, I take this elbow, pull it up, and keep this paddle in close. Now my paddle is oriented, so I'm not going to pop this ball up. I'll turn sideways, this ball comes into my center section, I pull this elbow up and back, and you can tell my paddle is more vertical than it was when I was doing this, which is causing that pop-up. I had a separate video about why I feel the chicken wing is a reasonable shot to be able to hit. I'll put the link in the description below. Feel free to go watch that video. All right, so how do we practice this? How do we drill this? If you have a ball machine, that helps. Set it up so we start, so these balls are coming on my paddle side hip. I talked about that in the chicken wing video. Have these balls come into this side. As this ball comes in, I'm going to pull this elbow up and back, and now my paddle is right there on my paddle side hip. Sideways, looks like that, and so the tip of my paddle is not up. That will help me keep that ball flat. Do a number of those, however many you want. Slide over a little bit, so now this ball comes into my midsection. Same thing, I'm down in my ready position. I will pull this elbow up and back, and then my paddle is right on the center line, on my spine line, and that will help me get practice keeping that ball low over the net. Third position was with that, as I slide over a little bit more, so now these balls are coming to my non-paddle side hip, and I'm going to practice with this ball coming in over here, pulling this paddle up, and being here. So this may feel a little bit weird when you start. That's okay, it will start to feel normal the more and more you do it. And then the higher balls up in here, if we can do the same thing, I can tell I'm not going to pop that ball up as much as if I try and do this. This is going to be a very weak shot regardless, and I'm not going to be able to hit this ball very hard. Versus if I can pull this elbow up and back, I can be here and swing forward at the same time and get some pace on that ball going the other way. Let's go take a look at that drill. All right, here's how we might drill that. I'm going to start off with this ball coming into my paddle side hip, take this elbow from my ready position, pull it up, and my paddle ends up right there. I'll hit some there, slide over, so now this ball comes in my center line, Same thing, take this elbow from my ready position, pull it up, keep my paddle there. Third position is having this ball come over to my non-paddle side hip, pulling this up. So I get experience in those three major areas. I'm better prepared in a game. Here we go. Would have helped if I was looking. All right, so I'm just trying to take this elbow, pull it up from my ready position, having this ball come into my paddle side hip. Even if they're high, as long as they're not too high, I'm trying to pull this elbow up. All right, now I'm going to move over. It's in my center line. Same thing, trying to get this elbow up. Keep this paddle vertical, coming up in front of my body, and not lift that ball up and give my opponents an overhead. Slide over here. Now it's coming to my non-paddle side hip. Same thing. So I'm getting accustomed to hitting all of these with backhands. Pulling this elbow up, keeping my paddle vertical. Once I do enough of those, I slide back over, back on my paddle side hip again, rinse and repeat. So I'm trying to do this over and over. That was ugly. Get accustomed to hitting this ball, slide over in the middle, elbow comes up, trying to hit these all with backhands, slide over now to my non-paddle side hip. So this is way better than if I keep this out in front as a forehand. It's really hard to not pop this ball up because the tip of my paddle is so far forward, and there's really very difficult to get that paddle tip all the way back where it needs to be. It's doable, but it just doesn't feel good because you have to really flex that wrist a lot. All right, back on my hip over here, slide back to the middle, and concentrate on my form here a little bit. Get down low in ready position, trying to bring this elbow up, slide over. Now it's on my non-paddle side hip as this ball comes in. Again, much better than trying to hit this with a forehand. That's just going to be difficult to control and not give my opponent a high ball. Practice that. Everything inside of this paddle side hip all the way over is a backhand. Try and think of it that way, and don't try and crowd this elbow in here. Try and hit that with a forehand. Hope that was helpful. Have a good day.